Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Rafae, Iqbal, and in today's show, of course, there's a major development that happened with regards to the Middle East. Of course, what was transpiring in the Middle East was very dire and very tragic indeed with regards to Israel's occupation and the atrocities, the genocide, the ethnic cleansing it was committing. With regards to that, we saw an expansion in Israel's adventurism recently. We saw that Israel, with regards to its adventurism, it expanded its designs to Lebanon as well, to Syria as well, to Yemen as well. In Lebanon, we saw the pager blasts happening. Of course, the global community, it termed it as global terrorism on Israel's part on what it was doing, and there were major voices from the world community terming it as war crimes and a blatant violation of international law. But it's not the first time that we've seen Israel violating those international laws and international norms. It has been doing so since over almost a year now. With regards to what it was doing in Palestine, the occupied Palestinian territories, it has now expanded its designs to Lebanon, even Syria, and even Yemen. With regards to that, we saw that Israel had attacked Iran's consul general in Syria as well. And we know, as part of international laws and international norms, the consul general of any country, it is the sovereign land. It is considered the sovereign land of that country. And of course, an attack on any country's consul general is an attack on that state itself. With regards to that, we know that Iran had the right to defend itself, and of course Iran has defended itself and confronted and of course retaliated against Israel with regards to its growing adventurism, expansionism and its hegemonic designs. Of course, we'll be talking about that, the different prospects of what's going to transpire in the Middle East, and what further developments are and we should expect that are going to happen in the coming days, because this escalation has just gotten to a whole new level. With regards to that, in the studios we've been joined by geopolitical analyst Faisal and Farzana Yaqub, who is a former Minister of Azad Jammu and Kashmir. On Skype we've been joined by former Ambassador and President of IRS Jauhar Saleem, and we've also been joined by Umer Karim. Analyst, thank you all for your time and being part of the conversation. I'll start off from Ms. Farzana. Ma'am, as we know, what we've seen happening, the latest development that we've seen, of course, Israel, it's not just limited to what it was doing in the occupied Palestinian territories. It's expanded its adventurism into Lebanon, into Syria, into Yemen, and of course, now with Iran's retaliation, we know that as Israel has been ignoring and being deaf to those international calls, it's going to escalate the situation further. How would you comment on the Middle East situation with regards to the very recent development?
Well, before we discuss the recent development, let us look at what has been going on in the UNGA. We have seen a rising of the Arabs. This is not the rising that we saw, the Arab Springs on the streets. This is actually a rising of the Arab leadership. And we've seen the foreign ministers coming out and giving really righteous statements which clearly shows, you know, they have shared the aspirations of the Arab people, the masses, that they are sick and tired of what Israel is doing. They are sick and tired of being of living in fear of this, you know, this international impunity that Israel seems to enjoy each and every time it commits an international crime, be it Palestine, be it all its neighbors, be it Lebanon, Jordan, Syria and other places as well, because we've seen that Israel enjoys this impunity, that it can fire into any country and kill anyone when and where it wants, and no one will ask any questions because it has the backing of some imperial powers. These are the same powers which were colonial powers. And so this seed of unrest has been lying in the Middle East. Middle East was always a very peaceful place, but since Israel, since 1947, there has not been a single day of rest. And to date, what is it that the Arabs want? All they ask is for Israel to push back to 1967 borders, and that is all that they desire and want. And all the Arab states are ready to ensure the security of Israelis if they can move back, if they are ready to sit across the table and have proper negotiations instead of threatening, blackmailing and killing and maiming.
Well, I'd like to include former Ambassador Jauhar Saleem in the conversation as well with regards to what Ms. Farzana Yaqub had to say. How do you comment on it with regards to how this conflict, this escalation, these tensions are polarizing the world community? As we've seen, there's Israel's allies on one end where they continue to support Israel no matter what it continues to do, and they support Israel with impunity. On the other hand, there's the world calls, the international calls, the global calls to stop these atrocities, to stop this genocide, to stop the ethnic cleansing, and of course this destabilization of the Middle East region. How do you comment on that?
Yeah, first, there are 3 or 4 dimensions to what is happening. The first is, of course, the recklessness, the unfettered recklessness on part of the Israeli Prime Minister after the October 7th attacks, which tarnished his image as the so-called Mr. Security of Israel, and his political fortunes, which were already in doldrums, they became even more fragile. So in response, what he's done is, and I've been saying it in my commentaries so far, and unfortunately it's been proven correct thus far, that he is willing to go to any extent to stay in power. And for that, what suited him was, ceasefire didn't suit him. What suited him was continued conflict. Why? Because the government in Israel is a coalition government, and his party is a minority. It doesn't have the majority, and that coalition, along with his party, the ultra hardliners, the ultra right or very extreme hardliners there, who were threatening to just leave his government, which meant the end of government and elections, which he doesn't want to face, and the court cases against him are very serious ones, which whereby he could actually end up in jail on corruption and other charges, very serious charges. So it is in his interest. It's like wagging the dog type of a situation. So he is basically externalizing the domestic politics of Israel by continuing this conflict and actually endeavoring to widen the conflict. First, we saw what happened in Gaza. 45,000 people, unfortunately, have been killed, and so much suffering. Unprecedented suffering is being witnessed there. And despite what the world has been saying, and the world has expressed its opinion from Brazil to Korea, everywhere, whether it's Europe or the Middle East or South America or China or Russia, South Asia, everywhere, the countries, the peoples have expressed aversion for what is happening there. They've asked Israel to stop it. They all want a ceasefire and an end to it, and then a beginning of negotiations for a 2-state solution. Even Americans were, calling for that. President Biden has been he said he launched diplomacy for that. Of course, we know there are 2 other prongs of diplomacy which are taking place as we speak. Even one was the Americans were trying to have, basically mediate negotiations between Hamas and Israeli intelligence agencies to effect some sort of a ceasefire, even if a temporary one. After months and months of negotiations, they seem to have hit a rock. On the other hand, recently Americans had been trying a similar track between Hezbollah and Israel, which also seemed to have failed. Now, what is happening is the Europeans, and even just today we see the statement of the Danish Prime Minister, who's calling for an international military intervention in the Middle East to effect a 2-state solution. So we see the exasperation of the European countries, many of whom have actually stopped shipments of armaments to Israel. Some of them just went on and unilaterally recognized Palestine as a state in total contravention of Israel's and America's wishes as well. The Americans are also upset with the impunity that Netanyahu has been showing, because in total disregard of what President Biden was trying to do, Israel has actually, but this is Netanyahu and his ultra-right partners in Israel. This is the right-wing politics playing, in Israel, which is playing out, and which has unfortunately pushed the whole region into a very, very unstable situation. Now, today's attack, which is a retaliation by Iran, as per some news reports, they have sent 102 missiles. I've seen other reports in Israeli papers which say that 500 rockets have been also fired. Now, this is very significant. This can widen the conflict even further. But this something which is not unexpected because the Americans were expecting it, and because of that, they had been warning Iran for some days now in anticipation of this not to launch an attack on Israel. But Israel, I think Iranians, were under immense pressure after the sort of Ismail Hania's killing in Iran after Hassan Nasrullah's assassination, because all these Hezbollah and Hamas and all these organizations, they are supported by Iran. Western analysts call them the Iranian proxies in the region, and one after another. And then, of course, some the Iranian-Israel envoy in Lebanon, and there were other killings. Direct Iranian personnel have been hit even recently. And because of that, there was this great pressure on Iran because to respond to show that it still is a power there in the region. But unfortunately, this opens the door for what some analysts in Israel, just today I read one particular analyst was suggesting that this provides an opening for Israel to attack Iran's nuclear installations. Now, if Israel takes that track.
Definitely, Ambassador Jauhar, of course, a point very well made, and you've raised some very crucial concerns in this conversation as well. Umer Karim, I'd like your comments with regards to what is happening, what is transpiring in the Middle East. What prospects do you see for the ceasefire deal? And of course, secondly, how do you comment, because there were some countries that were allies of Israel that portrayed themselves as champion of human rights, that portrayed themselves as champions of democracy, and of course they have been supporting Israel through all of its genocide, its ethnic cleansing. When do you think there was a comment on and a warning issued to Iran? Do you think the same warning should have been issued to Israel as well, to take cognizance and to tread lightly with respect to what it was doing in the Middle East?
I think it has been clear from the very first day that there has been a duplicity in terms of how human rights standards have been applied within the region, and how Israel has been given a blank check to carry out whatever it wants, first in Gaza and then in Lebanon. And what we see today is the ultimate end, or you can say the next stage in that crisis development. And Western powers, particularly the US, which has the supreme amount of leverage vis-a-vis Israel, is to blame here, because if the US had put its foot down, and as some reports have suggested that in the initial days after 7 October attack, Israel wanted to assassinate or try to assassinate the Hezbollah chief.
Well, of course, with regards to that, we'll also update the viewers and all of our panelists that these are the fresh and live visuals that we have brought to your screens with regards to Iran's retaliation against Israel. And of course, you can see on your screens the rockets, the missiles fired by Iran. There are more than 100 rockets as being reported, and of course this is a major retaliation by Iran, as Iran's consul general was attacked by Israel in Syria. And with regards to international norms and laws, we know that Iran had the right to defend itself, as an attack on any country's consul general is an attack on the country's and the state's own land. With regards to that, Umer Karim, I'd also like you to continue with what you were commenting on.
So yeah, this crisis had been developing, and after the Israeli killing of Ismail Haniya within Tehran, and there was an expectation, of course, in all quarters that Iran will respond. And but as previously Ambassador Jauhar was also saying, that it gave time to international mediators to maybe try to enact a ceasefire, but the international community again failed to do that, mainly because of the obstinance of the Israeli Prime Minister. But the Israeli Prime Minister, we need to understand, he sees this as an opportunity and as a carte blanche to do whatever he wants. And so he continued with his genocide and military operation in Gaza, and afterwards he took on Lebanon. Politically, it is indeed advantageous to him, But how much this is creating disability, destabilizing the region, we all see this. So we cannot say that we cannot say that we are surprised by this Iranian retaliation, but it would be crucial to see that how much damage actually has happened within Israel after these missile attacks, which definitely are way bigger in intensity and multitude as compared to the last Iranian attacks. And then, if there hasn't been much damage done, can the Western powers actually now restrain Israel from responding to this action? And but it will be interesting to see this, because naturally this has been a kind of an escalation ladder, where first Israel was dominating, but today Iran, as somebody wrote, that Iran's strategic patience ran out, and it decided to respond. And this is quite a intense response.
It had the right to respond as well.
Yes, exactly. And I guess that now uh, what the international community can do or should do is try to restrain Israel from any response or the escalation of this crisis, particularly if no real damage has been done within Israel. Because naturally, it was expected that Iran was in a difficult position. It was under a lot of pressure, and its deterrence was online, so it couldn't really remain silent. It remained silent after the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh for a reason, because it traded its deterrence with the possibility of a ceasefire. But now we know that the ceasefire possibilities are virtually over, because Prime Minister Netanyahu is having his own way. But will he continue to do so? Because if Prime Minister Netanyahu continues to do this, and now again expands the war by attacking Iran, then the US will be eventually involved. The US cannot stay out of it. And this will again be a very interesting event when a local pariah will suck the US into its own war. And again, the US will be fighting somebody else's war, which would be a big question mark for US national and security interests. That why does the US has to fight Israel's wars when these wars could have been very much avoided?
Of course, with regards to that, I'd like insights from Ambassador Jauhar Saleem first, and Raja Faisal, I'll come to you after that. With regards to that, so how do you see, what prospects do you see for the Middle East with regards to the escalation that has just happened? What do you see from now on?
Yeah, it's a very unfortunate situation, but also it's a very dangerous situation. I think it's very important that the United Nations and the great powers, particularly the United States, they press ahead with their diplomacy, preventative diplomacy, and also it is the time for some sort of a patience. Yes, Iran had shown patience, and they had actually said publicly that they would not retaliate to Hassan Nasrullah's death or Ismail Haniyeh's death, particularly Ismail Haniyeh's death. They had said because they want to give the ceasefire negotiations a chance. And when that did not happen, then and after that, the events in Lebanon probably pushed them towards reacting. But now the danger is Israel is they are totally reckless now, as I've said, and they are trying to widen the conflict, Netanyahu, because it suits him. And as it has been said, it may be in his interest to force the Americans to to get involved as well militarily. But I think the Americans would not want to do that. In the past as well, there have been instances where the Israelis planned strikes on Iran's nuclear installations, but at the 11th hour, they were prevailed upon by the Americans not to do so, because the Americans knew that would really trigger a very dangerous conflict there in the Middle East. So I don't think the U.S. wants a direct conflict between Iran and Israel. The countries are kind of, they're far apart. They're not neighbors. But these days, with the military technology that all countries have, wars are still possible. So we would see intense.
Helpless. The US seems helpless from what's been transpiring, even if it doesn't want the conflict to escalate.
Yeah. So what we can see is, first of all, we have to see the immediate in terms of what is the impact of all these projectiles that have been thrown by Iran on Israel. We're not really sure about the exact numbers. I've quoted the figures from the Israeli newspapers, 102 missiles and 500 rockets. But whatever number there is, the last time Iranians threw 300 projectiles on Israel. But I think they took great care in sort of, ensuring that those were not, the dense populated areas were not targeted. And because most of those projectiles were so slow that they were anticipated and very, very few of them reached Israel. This may happen again, although we have reports that some of them have actually fallen close to Tel Aviv.
Well, definitely, of course, with regards to that, we know that, efforts should have been made more in a more effective way to try to control the situation before it escalated this much. With regards to that, former Ambassador Jauhar Saleem and the President of IRS, thank you for your time and being part of the conversation. I'll move towards Raja Faisal. With regards to what we've seen has transpired in the Middle East, of course, it's a major development. But what we've talked about over this past 30-40 minutes, it was about how the situation has escalated, how there's polarization in the world. We can see there's two sides on which, of course, Israel has its allies, but then we see there's the world community. It's talking against Israel's actions. When we go back in time, and we've also seen that the League of Nations, before the United Nations, it was the League of Nations. But of course, it could not owe up to the expectations which were upheld from that League of Nations when it was formed, to uphold peace in the world. With regards to that, the United Nations, there's been repeated calls, there's been resolutions, there's also been a verdict from the ICJ, but it hasn't helped in stopping Israel, in stopping its genocide, ethnic cleansing, and destabilizing the entire region. How do you see things moving on from here? Do we also see the United Nations, like the League of Nations, dissolving and coming up with a new name?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question, Rafae. When we talk about Nazis, they were allowed to do whatever they wanted to do in 1930s. Of course, from the start of Nuremberg laws, when Nuremberg laws they came and nobody said anything, and then later on we saw that they had a design. Of course, Jews at that time in Germany, in Austria, in Poland, in Czech Republic at that time. In all of the countries, they were, of course, facing that hatred from the Nazis, and we saw the world did nothing at that time, and that is when we saw the League of Nations. It had no meaning at that time. Right now, we are facing a similar situation in which, of course, we are seeing that the major, members of Security Council of United Nations, they are allies, they are facilitators, they are the ones who are giving arms to Israel to, of course, carry out this genocide. And we have been seeing that since last year, they have been providing each and everything in terms of facilitation to carry out its designs. So far, 45,000 innocent people, they got murdered. They literally got murdered at the hands of Israeli troops in Gaza. And when it comes to more than 50,000 Gazans, they are still missing in the action. And who knows, they are part of that, damage as well to the humankind. And when we see towards Israel, it did not stop at Gaza. They started going towards, of course, Lebanon as well. And they have been carrying out all of these activities. And rather than stopping Israel, we saw US was inviting Netanyahu to the Congress, and Congress was all clapping towards whatever he was saying, as if he was, being a sort of champion of peace. No, he wasn't a champion of peace. He was someone who was declared a criminal at the in the ICC verdict, and US paid no heed to it. Same is the case with the Western other powers as well. We saw one by one Scandinavian powers, of course, they came up with statements against Israel against Netanyahu. Norway is the a country that can be considered as a premier country that actually came up with a stance against Israel that was required from the saner world. Of course, we saw similar was the situation with Spain as well. With Spain, they came up with the similar statements against Israel, and then Ireland came up with the sanity as well. Sanity must prevail. All the Western powers, they are required to play their role, but rather so far they are playing a very negative role, in which we are seeing that they are not only extending the arms, but there are news that US is also in the Mediterranean with its warships to assist Israel if required, which means that they would never ever let Israel face all of these countries, though Israel on the papers, when it comes to all of the arms Israel has, they are far superior than all of the neighbors of Israel. But still, US is making sure that nobody says anything to Israel, because Israel has a design and it is carrying out that design. To me, the very kind of Nazism we saw in the previous century in 1930s, similar kind of I must say, I have been using this word before as well. It's not Nazism, but it's Ashkenazism, which is we are experiencing, of course, the Zionism with its hatred towards the Muslim states or towards the Islam itself. Don't forget, all of these Ashkenazi Zionists, they are not from Palestine, they are from European side. We always say, the people of Palestine, they are the outsiders. No, they are the people of the land. But if, of course, Israel would always consider itself to be the ultimate power and to be the ultimate owner of Palestine and call it Israel. Israel, name of a country that never existed before 1948, and before that nobody knew that it could be a country, but of course it was forced by the colonialists, colonial powers, be it Britain, be it France. They were the ones who were behind this design, and slowly and gradually they actually helped out Israel, and what they tried was the economies of the countries revolving or surrounding Israel. They made sure that they can never grab a sort of momentum in terms that they can be strong enough to reply Israel, and that is what we are seeing right now. Coming to the current situation, I was going through one of the statements which has just come up now. It is from Iranian Revolutionary Guards. There is a statement which says that if Israel responds us, we will of course do it again. It means that they are ending up with whatever their ballistic missiles were, their attack, and now they are waiting whether Israel comes up with a response. That is quite confusing for me. Are they waiting for Israel to attack Iran and that would be considered as a response, or they are waiting for Israel to carry out its continuous designs against Gaza, against Lebanon, or against any of the neighboring countries, and that would be considered as a response? They haven't cleared it so far, but the news is that they have said that if there is a response from the Israeli sides, then of course Iran would do this attack once more, and they have the capability to do it. But right now, Rafae, we just need to wait whether the sanity prevails in the world or not. If it does, we will be seeing all of the leaders sitting on the same table talking about how to negotiate peace tomorrow. If not, then I see it as an United Nations being an organization that has no teeth and is toothless, and we are on a brink of Third World War.
Of course, Raja Faisal, when you were talking about the US having strategic allies, of course, the irony that I was thinking about, on one end, one strategic ally, the leader of that country, is being called the butcher of Gujarat. On the other hand, the other strategic ally, it's being called the butcher of Palestinians. And of course, with regards to we see that the champion of human rights, the champions of democracy, they need to start having better allies that they can project a better image to the world. Otherwise, it just sees hypocrisy on their part. Ms. Farzana, Yaqub, how would you comment on that?
Well, it is very apt to bring up a butcher of Gujarat. India loves to follow Israel, and by the way, sometimes Israel follows India as well, because whatever India pulls off in Kashmir, Israel does that, upping up the ante against Palestinians, be it the settler colonialism, which is taking away the lands of Palestinians. We see India doing that in Kashmir, taking away the land of the people, you know, maiming and restricting indigenous people, while settlers are being invited into Kashmir. The same we see happening in Palestine. Settlers have more power, while the indigenous people, the Palestinians, who are just not Muslims, they are Christians and they are Coptic Jews as well. So, all religions on one side, and just as Faisal said, that it is all about Zionism. It has nothing to do with the indigenous people and the right of the people. It is all about the aspirations of America and its crony states. Sometimes it does look like, you know, the real power is Israel and the vassal state is America, because that is how it has been acting. It provides for Israel, it has been providing money, it has been providing ammunition, it has been providing manpower. India too has been providing money, it has been providing ammunition and manpower as well. We have recently heard that India has provided a lot of manpower through its Modi's favorite Adanis and Ambanis. This is what they are doing. This goes not just with the governments, but their elite corporations as well. And so, this is not conspiracy theories when we say that this is a whole establishment. The international establishment at the moment is helping out Israel. Why? Because Israel wants more land. When they say from the sea, from the river to the sea, there is a lot of land that still remains to be usurped from the indigenous people, and Israel is not going to stop. UN can fall off, all the Muslim countries might go to wherever they are wanted to be going to. Israel is not going to stop until and unless America, UK, France, these three powers who use their veto always to defend and protect Israel, until and unless these veto power holding states do not back off, they will have to fight off the rest of the world. Once again, let us look at how UNGA has been going on. Every country has spoken against Israel. Every country has spoken and voted against Israel. The whole world is on one side and there are a few countries on the other side. Now, what we have to see, that if it is true democracy, the numbers should count, but if it is not democracy, the weight will count. So, it is a challenge for democracy as well.
Ms. Farzana, Yaqub, the way you've put it, very beautiful. Of course, it is high time for America to realize as well what their connections, their strategic allies. It gives a very impression to the world, of course, and not just a very bad impression, it shows hypocrisy on America's part. But that will conclude today's show. I'd like to thank all of our guests, former Ambassador Jauhar Saleem, Ms. Farzana Yaqub, former Minister of Azad Jammu and Kashmir, Raja Faisal, geopolitical analyst, and Umer Karim, analyst. Thank you all for your time and being part of the conversation. Of course, what is happening in the Middle East is of a very grave concern, and of course, we'll keep updating you as the situation unfolds. See you same time tomorrow. Till then, take care.